They say everyone has a price in the wasteland, but they never tell you what happens when that price is paid in souls. I've been on both sides of a slave collar, worn it, held the remote, felt the weight of controlling another human's heartbeat. And I'm here to tell you the truth about the economy that really runs the post-apocalyptic world. This is my final confession about how the Fallout universe's slave trade works, who really profits from human suffering, and why I went from being a 14-year-old victim to becoming Paradise Fall's most successful slaver before trying to burn it all down. The collar marks on my neck have faded, but the screams of every person I sold, every child I condemned, every life I destroyed for caps, those never stop. You want to know about slavers? I've worn the collar. I've held the key. I've been on both sides of the chain. And let me tell you something. There's no washing that kind of dirt off your soul. Not in this life, not in whatever comes after. The wasteland takes everything from you but slavery. Slavery takes what's left after everything else is gone. My name doesn't matter anymore. Haven't used it in, God, must be 15 years now. These days, they just call me the turncoat when they think I can't hear them. Fair enough. I earned that name. Earned it the day I went from wearing shackles to holding the remote that makes them spark. You ever felt a slave collar activate? Really felt it? Not just heard about it, not just seen it from a distance, but had that cold metal pressed against your throat while someone else holds your life in their hand, like it's worth less than a bottle of purified water. I was 14 when Paradise Fall's raiders took our settlement. 14. Still had all my teeth back then. Still believed the world could be fixed if good people just tried hard enough. My mother had filled my head with stories about how things were before the bombs, shopping malls, schools where kids learned instead of scavenged, police who actually protected people. She'd been born in Vault 101, see, escaped when she was young, full of hope that the surface world just needed some civilizing. The slavers killed her first. Quick bullet to the head when she tried to shield my little brother. That was a mercy. I understand now. A bullet is always a mercy compared to what comes next. They collared 23 of us that day. The collar. Christ, you can't imagine what it's like until it's on you. It's not just the weight, though it's heavier than you'd think, pressing down on your shoulders until your spine starts to curve. It's not just the chafing, the way it rubs your skin raw until your neck is nothing but one big infected wound that never heals because the metal keeps grinding into it with every step. It's the knowledge, the constant, crushing knowledge that someone else owns the very breath in your lungs. See, these aren't just chains. The collars they use, explosive collars they're called, though that's almost too clinical for what they really are. They're pre-war tech that Vault-Tec developed. Yeah, that's right. The same company that built those underground shelters that promised to save humanity, they're the ones who perfected the technology to enslave it. The collars work on a simple principle: obedience or death. Step too far from your handler's transmitter, your head becomes red mist. Try to remove it, same result. Disobey a direct order? Well, if you're lucky, they'll just use the shock function. 20,000 volts straight into your spinal column. I've seen grown men soil themselves from the pain. I've done it myself. But here's what they don't tell you about the slave trade in the Capital Wasteland. What you won't hear in those holotapes the Brotherhood of Steel puts out about wasteland atrocities. It's not chaos. It's not random brutality. It's business. Cold, calculated, profitable business. Paradise Falls isn't just some raider camp that happens to keep slaves. It's the beating heart of an economy that stretches from the Pitt all the way down to the Commonwealth. Every major settlement, every civilized town you've ever heard of, they're all touched by it, whether they admit it or not. You think Rivet City's hydroponic farms maintain themselves? You think those fancy Brahmin barons in Canterbury Commons tend their own herds? You think the caravans that bring you your ammunition and medicine don't occasionally carry cargo that screams? The first month after my capture, they didn't even put me to work. That's another thing people don't understand. Breaking a slave isn't about the whip or the collar. It's about the waiting. They keep you in pens, 40 or 50 crammed into spaces meant for 10. No privacy, no dignity. You watch others get selected, watch them leave, and some come back broken and bloody while others don't come back at all. You learn to recognize the buyers by their needs, the quiet ones in decent clothes. They want household slaves, cooks, cleaners, someone to warm their bed. Those were the lucky assignments, if you can call any of it luck. The ones in mining gear covered in rock dust. They'd work you until your lungs gave out in some godforsaken tunnel. The military types, whether they're Brotherhood, Enclave remnants, or just well-organized raiders, they wanted fodder, human shields, trap springers. But the worst were the ones who came at night. The ones who wore masks or kept their faces hidden. They'd point at the young ones, the pretty ones, the ones who still had fight in their eyes. Entertainment, they called it. I watched them take my brother on day 32. He was 12. The handler that day was a woman named Crimson. That wasn't her real name, of course. Slavers. They all take new names when they join up. Like they're shedding their old selves, becoming something else, something worse. Crimson got her name from her hobby. She liked to paint with blood. Her own little art gallery in Paradise Falls, made from the ones who tried to escape. She looked at my brother, looked at me, and smiled. "Family, right?" she said. "I can always tell. Same eyes. Tell you what, boy, you want to keep baby brother safe. Keep him from becoming some sick bastard's plaything. I might have a deal for you. You take those deals. You always take those deals because the alternative is watching everything you love get torn apart piece by piece while you're powerless to stop it. That's how they get you. Not with the collar, not with the whip, with hope. The false, poisonous hope that if you just do this one thing, if you just compromise this one time, you can save something worth saving. The deal was simple. I'd help manage the other slaves, keep them in line, report any escape attempts, be a good dog, and my brother would get kitchen duty instead of the other thing. That's how it starts. That's how a person goes from victim to collaborator, one small compromise at a time, each one feeling like survival, like the smart choice, like the only choice. You tell yourself you're different from them. You're just playing along. You're protecting people. You're learning the trade. Because here's the ugly truth about slavery in the wasteland. It's not sustainable without people like me, people who cross that line. The raiders, the psychopaths, the ones who were born broken. There may be 1 in 10 of the slaver population. The rest are people who made choices. Bad choices, desperate choices, but choices all the same. Within 6 months, I knew every aspect of the business. Transport routes, collar maintenance, braking techniques, which settlements would buy and which would shoot slavers on sight. The going rate for different products, that's what they call people once they're collared. Products, units, inventory, a healthy adult male, 300 caps, maybe 400 if they had useful skills. Women went for more, especially if they were young, clean, unscarred. Children were special orders, specific requests, premium prices. I learned that the Pitt, that hellhole of a city up north, goes through 100 slaves a month. The radiation and pollution, there, it makes people sterile, makes them desperate for fresh workers. They don't care about age or health. They just need bodies to feed into the steel mills and scrap yards until the bodies give out. I learned that certain Vault-Tec vaults were still active, still running experiments, and they'd paid top dollar for specific genetic markers. Blue eyes, type O negative blood, lack of radiation scarring. They had shopping lists. I learned that the Enclave, those remnants of the old government, they weren't gone, not completely. They had outposts that needed subjects, test subjects. They wanted slaves who could still breed, who hadn't been too corrupted by radiation. They were trying to restart something that required pure human stock. But the most important thing I learned, the thing that changed me from prisoner to participant. I learned that slavers are afraid too. They're afraid of their bosses, afraid of each other, afraid of waking up one day with a collar around their own necks because they showed weakness, showed mercy, showed anything that might be mistaken for humanity. The day I truly became one of them wasn't dramatic. There was no grand moment of choice, no devil's bargain at a crossroads. It was a Tuesday, cloudy, bit of rad rain in the morning that left everything smelling like rust and decay. A new shipment had come in, small farming settlement that had refused to pay protection fees. Crimson was teaching me the evaluation process, checking teeth, muscle tone, looking for diseases or deformities that would affect price. Routine stuff, horrible, but routine. There was a girl, maybe 16, red hair like my mother's, same kind of freckles across her nose. When I got to her, she whispered, "Please, just that, just please." And I looked her in the eyes, saw my mother there, saw every person I'd failed to save, saw myself reflected in her tears, and I said the words that damned me forever. This one's premium stock. Tag her for special handling. Special handling. That meant she'd go to the highest bidder. That meant she'd bring in enough caps to keep Crimson happy, keep my brother safe another month, keep me valuable enough to stay alive. That meant I'd chosen, not survival, not protection, profit. The transformation was complete, but I didn't realize it yet. Wouldn't realize it for another year, when I caught my reflection in a broken mirror and didn't recognize the eyes staring back at me. They were predator's eyes, cold, calculating. The kind that could look at a child and see caps instead of innocence. My brother had been dead for 3 months by then, and I was still going through the motions like he was alive. Still setting aside extra food. Still making deals to keep him safe. Crimson knew, of course. She'd been the one to put the bullet in his head when he tried to run, but she let me keep pretending because broken people are easier to control than shattered ones. You want to know what really happened to him? What really happens to the young ones in the slave trade that nobody talks about? The Commonwealth. The Institute. Those boogeyman stories you hear about people being replaced by synthetic copies. They're not just stealing settlers in the night. They buy subjects, young subjects, malleable ones. They need to study human development, human psychology, human breaking points. Can't exactly volunteer for that kind of research, can you? My brother lasted 43 days in their possession before his collar detonated. They pushed too hard, asked too many questions about Paradise Falls security. The Institute might be advanced, but they still don't understand the simple cruelty of the explosive collar's dead man switch. But I didn't know that then. I thought he was alive somewhere. Maybe escaped, maybe just moved to another camp. Hope is a parasite in the wasteland. It burrows into your brain and makes you do terrible things to feed it. So I became excellent at terrible things. Within 18 months, I was running my own catches. That's what we called them. Catches. Like fishing. Like it was some wholesome activity instead of destroying entire communities. Crimson had promoted me, gave me my own crew of 5 broken souls who'd made similar compromises. We were the B team, handling the routes too dangerous or too worthless for the senior slavers. You learn things when you're on the catching side, like how settlements organize their defenses, how they hide their children when raiders come. The look in a father's eyes when he realizes he can't protect his family. The exact sound a mother makes when you rip her baby from her arms. I remember every face, every single face. There was a ghoul settlement near Underworld. You know, that place in the Museum of History where the non-feral ghouls gathered. These weren't Underworld residents, but a smaller community that had formed nearby, hoping for protection through proximity. 32 ghouls trying to build something. Here's something the Brotherhood's propaganda won't tell you. Ghouls make terrible slaves. Most buyers won't touch them. They're radiation-soaked, falling apart, and humans are terrified of going feral. But there's a market for everything in the wasteland if you know where to look. The Enclave remnants I mentioned. They wanted ghouls, wanted to study the mutation, understand why some went feral and others didn't. They believed, still believe, that if they could crack that code, they could make their pure humans immune to radiation's worst effects, create perfect soldiers for reclaiming the wasteland. We took all 32, told them we were relocating them somewhere safer, away from human prejudice. Some of them actually thanked us. The youngest was a girl who'd ghoulified recently, maybe 2 months since her transformation. She still had most of her hair, her voice hadn't gotten that rasp yet. She kept asking about her parents, not understanding. They were the 2 ferals we'd put down at the settlement's edge. Her parents had turned, but she hadn't. Nobody knows why that happens. Different genetics, different exposure levels, different luck. 3,000 caps for the lot. That was the going rate for 32 souls who'd survived nuclear holocaust, only to end up as lab rats. Crimson gave me a bonus. Said I had real talent for finding niche markets. But the real money? The real money was in the breeding programs. Yeah, you heard that right. Breeding. Programs. See, slavery isn't just about labor, it's about sustainability. You can only raid so many settlements before word spreads, before people start fighting back harder, before the cost outweighs the profit. But if you can breed your own stock, that's pure profit after the initial investment. There's a place out west, they call it the ranch, though that's like calling a deathclaw a big lizard. It's a Vault-Tec facility that never quite became a vault. Construction was 90% done when the bombs fell, so it survived mostly intact. Underground, hidden, perfect for things you don't want the world to see. The ranch breeds slaves. They've been doing it for 50 years, maybe longer. Selective breeding, they call it. Matching physical traits, trying to create the perfect product for different markets. Strong backs for labor, pretty faces for entertainment, docile temperaments for household service. The women there, God, the women. Some of them have never seen sunlight. Born in breeding pens, raised to accept that their only purpose is to produce more slaves. They don't even have names, just numbers tattooed on their necks. B47, C23, generation markers followed by birth order. I delivered 12 young women to the ranch during my time as a slaver. 12. The youngest was 13. The oldest was 19. All selected for fertility, health, lack of obvious mutations. They paid 500 caps per head, plus bonuses for virgins. The virgin bonus was an extra 100 caps. I collected it 8 times. You judging me yet? You should be. But let me tell you something about judgment in the wasteland. It's a luxury only the living can afford. And staying living when you're neck deep in the slave trade means becoming something that shouldn't live. I got good at the mathematics of misery, calculating transport costs versus expected profits, mortality rates on different routes, which settlements would pay ransom for their captured people and which would write them off as dead, the depreciation rate of human property based on age, health, skill set. Did you know a slave loses approximately 10% of their value for every year over 40 they are? After 50, they're barely worth the collar around their neck unless they have specialized knowledge. Pre-war engineers, doctors, scientists, those could still fetch decent prices. But your average wastelander who survived past 50 might as well put them down. More profitable to take the collar back than feed them on the journey to market. We had a name for that. Retiring inventory. I retired 17 people personally. Quick bullet to the base of the skull while they slept. That was my signature mercy. Never let them see it coming. Other slavers, they'd make a show of it. Use it to keep the others in line. But I still had that much humanity left. That microscopic shred that said, if you're going to murder someone for being unprofitable, at least don't make them suffer for it. The worst part, some of them thanked me for choosing them, for ending it, for not selling them to the Super Mutants. Oh, didn't I mention that market? Yeah, the big green bastards buy slaves too. Not all Super Mutant groups, but enough. They use them for food when Brahmin are scarce. sometimes for entertainment. And their idea of entertainment involves seeing how many bones they can break before the screaming stops. But mostly they use them for conversion. The Forced Evolutionary, Virus, FEV, another gift from the pre-war world, another Vault-Tec adjacent nightmare. The super mutants can't reproduce naturally, so they make more of themselves by exposing humans to FEV. Problem is, the process only works right on humans with minimal radiation exposure. Pure strain humans, they call them. Vault dwellers mostly. Pure strain humans sold to super mutants. 2,000 caps, minimum. I found 3 in my time. 3 people who'd lived their whole lives in functioning vaults, who'd emerged thinking they were going to help rebuild the world. The first 2, I didn't know what I was sending them to. The third was a Vault 81 resident. They'd sent him out to trade for medicine. 23 years old, brilliant scientist, thought he could negotiate with raiders because all humans want fundamentally the same things. His exact words as I was checking him for diseases. I looked at his soft hands that had never held a weapon, his clean skin that had never felt real sunlight, his eyes that still believed in the basic goodness of humanity. And I tagged him for the super mutant buyers, knowing exactly what would happen. Knowing he'd be strapped to a table, pumped full of FEV, twisted into something unrecognizable. If he was lucky, he'd keep some intelligence. If he wasn't, he'd become another mindless brute wandering the wasteland. 2,000 caps. That's what fundamental human goodness was worth. Sorry. Dropped my glass. Hands shake sometimes now. Started about 3 years into the trade. Crimson said it was normal. Conscience tremors, she called them. Said they'd go away once I fully accepted what I was. She was wrong. They got worse, especially after I met the railroad. You know about them, right? The underground railroad for synths. Well, they don't just free synthetic humans. Sometimes they hit slaver camps, free human slaves too. They're ghosts in the Commonwealth, but down in the Capital Wasteland, they were just starting to organize. One night, they hit our convoy. Professional job. Knocked out our guards with gas grenades. Had the collar frequencies jammed before we knew what was happening. Freed 43 slaves in under 10 minutes. But they didn't kill us. The slavers, I mean. Their leader, this woman with a shaved head and burn scars down her neck, she looked right at me and said, "We know you were one of them once. The collar marks never really fade, do they? It's not too late to remember who you were." Then they left. Just left us there, alive, with no product and no way to explain to Crimson how we'd lost an entire shipment. That's when I learned the last crucial lesson about the slave trade. There's only one way out, and it's the same for slavers and slaves: death. But death's not always quick in the wasteland. Sometimes it takes years. Sometimes it looks like living. Crimson didn't buy our story about the railroad. Why would she? 43 slaves don't just vanish without inside help. She knew one of us had turned or was thinking about turning, so she did what any smart slaver does when they smell betrayal. She made us prove our loyalty. The test was simple. Each of us had to personally execute a slave, not retire inventory, not put down an old or sick one. Execute a prime product in front of the others as a lesson. Waste profit to prove we valued our positions more than caps. She brought out 5 kids, none older than 10. 1 each, she said. Make it memorable. Make it so every slave in this camp knows what happens when they think about running. Make it so your own souls know there's no going back. 4 of my crew did it without hesitation. Knives, clubs. 1 used his bare hands. They'd crossed that line so long ago they didn't even see it anymore. Just another day in Paradise Falls. Just another horror that would fade into the background. Radiation of nightmares. When my turn came, she handed me a girl. Maybe 6. Missing her front teeth. Blonde hair so matted with dirt it looked brown. She looked exactly like my cousin Sarah. Sarah, who died in Vault 87 when the FEV experiments went wrong. Sarah, who I'd promised to protect when we were children playing in the vault corridors, pretending the world above was going to welcome us someday. I raised my gun. The girl didn't cry. They learn not to cry by that age in the camps. Crying just makes it worse. She just stared at me with eyes that had seen too much, understood too much, accepted too much. And I turned and put 3 bullets into Crimson's chest. Stupid. Suicidal. Should have been the end of me right there. But here's another thing about Paradise Falls. Loyalty is negotiable. The other slavers watched Crimson bleed out on the dirt, looked at each other, and the most senior one just said, "Guess you're in charge now." That's it. Murder your boss, become the boss. Law of the wasteland, law of the jungle, law of whatever hellscape we've made of this world. But I wasn't interested in being in charge. I was interested in something else. Something that had been growing in me since that railroad woman looked me in the eyes. A plan. A stupid, impossible, guaranteed to get me killed plan. I was going to burn it all down. Not Paradise Falls. Not just one camp or one route. The entire slave trade from the Capital Wasteland to the Commonwealth. Every auction block, every breeding pen, every collar manufacturer. All of it. First though, I had to become indispensable. I took over Crimson's networks, but I changed the focus, started specializing in the high-end market only. Vault dwellers for the Institute. Pure strains for super mutants. Specific genetic markers for God knows what purpose. The kind of slaves that went for thousands, not hundreds. Within 6 months, I was Paradise Falls' top earner. Within a year, I had direct connections to every major buyer in the Eastern Wasteland. I knew their names, their preferences, their weaknesses, where they kept their caps, where they kept their consciences, if they had any left. And I started keeping records. Every transaction, every buyer, every route, every guard rotation, every collar frequency, every dirty secret that kept the whole system running. 3 notebooks full of evidence that the slave trade wasn't random raider cruelty, but an organized economy supported by settlements that claimed to be civilized. You want to know something that'll really twist your gut? Megaton. That town, built around an unexploded bomb, supposed to be this beacon of civilization. Their mayor, Lucas Sims. He knew. He knew slavers used the back routes near his town. He knew because he took a cut to look the other way. 5% of every shipment that passed within sight of Megaton's walls, Rivet City's council, they had a standing order for domestic workers. They called them indentured servants, said they were paying off debts, but a collar by any other name still explodes when you try to run. Even the Brotherhood of Steel, those self-righteous tech hoarders. In their power armor, they bought slaves, not directly of course. They used intermediaries, purchased technical consultants, who happened to be pre-war engineers with bombs around their necks. For the greater good, they said. To preserve technology and rebuild civilization. Everybody's hands were dirty. Everybody was complicit. The entire wasteland economy ran on suffering, and anyone who tells you different is either lying or blind. I collected evidence for 2 years. 2 years of pretending to be the perfect slaver while documenting every atrocity. 2 years of sending people to hell while mapping out the infrastructure of that hell. 2 years of becoming the monster so I could learn how to kill it. The breaking point came in winter, December 2279, if dates matter anymore. There was going to be a gathering. All the major slavers, buyers, even some settlement leaders who profited from the trade. A celebration of Paradise Falls' 50th anniversary. 50 years of organized slavery in the Capital Wasteland. They were proud of it. Proud of building an institution that survived the apocalypse. 300 people would be there. The worst people left alive in the wasteland. All in one place. All with their guards down. And thanks to my reputation, I was in charge of security. I still have the guest list. Want to hear some names? Eulogy Jones, the self-styled emperor of Paradise Falls. Ashur from the Pitt, who ran an entire city on slave labor. Representatives from Vault-Tec's surviving facilities, still running experiments, still needing subjects. Canterbury Commons trade coordinator. Tenpenny himself, that British bastard living in his tower built on suffering. Even had confirmation that the Institute would send a courser. One of their synth hunters, coming to shop for test subjects in Person 300 monsters who deserve to burn. But here's the thing about Paradise Falls. It's not just slavers. There are slaves there too. Hundreds of them. Men, women, children who'd done nothing wrong except exist in a world that sees them as property. If I destroyed Paradise Falls, if I detonated the mini-nuke I'd acquired from a drunk Talon Company, Merc, I'd kill them all. The guilty and the innocent. The slavers and the enslaved. Everyone. The railroad woman had said it wasn't too late to remember who I was. But who was I? The 14-year-old boy who'd watched his mother die? The collaborator who'd sent children to breeding pens? The slaver who'd retired 17 people for the crime of aging? Or was I something else now? Something worse? Someone who could massacre hundreds of innocents to destroy an evil system? I made my choice 3 hours before the celebration. I went to the slave pens with a bag full of collar override keys I'd been collecting for 2 years. Started unlocking them one by one, telling them to wait, to stay quiet, that when they heard the explosion, they should run, and never look back. I got through maybe 60 before someone noticed. Grouse, one of the door guards, saw me with the keys and started yelling. I shot him, but the damage was done. Alarms started blaring. Slavers came running, the slaves scattered. Some ran immediately, others froze. Some even tried to stop others from leaving because they'd been broken so thoroughly they couldn't imagine freedom. It was chaos. Beautiful, terrible chaos. In the confusion, I made it to the main celebration hall where the early arrivals were gathering. Eulogy Jones saw me, smiled, started to congratulate me on some recent acquisition. I pulled out the detonator. For my brother, I said. For my mother. For every face I remember. His smile faltered. Others started reaching for weapons. The Corsair, I'll never forget how fast that thing moved, almost reached me. Almost. The explosion killed 87 people instantly. Slavers, buyers, 3 settlement leaders, and 22 slaves who hadn't gotten far enough away. 22 innocents who died because I decided their lives were worth less than destroying the system. I survived. Barely. Lost my left arm, most of my hearing. Enough blood that I should have died. But the wasteland doesn't let you off that easy. Some escaped slaves found me, dragged me to a medic, said I'd freed them, saved them. I hadn't saved anyone. I'd just changed the management. Paradise Falls rebuilt within a year. New slavers moved in, took over the routes, wore the same collars around different necks. The Pitt found new suppliers. The Institute used different intermediaries. The breeding ranches kept breeding. The whole system just adapted. All those deaths, all that planning, all that evidence I'd collected, none of it mattered. You can't destroy an idea with a bomb. Can't kill a market that exists because the demand exists. As long as people want to own other people, as long as labor has value and human dignity doesn't, there will be slavery. I'm dying now. Radiation from the blast finally catching up. Tumors in places that can't be cut out. Got maybe a week left, maybe less. That's why I'm recording this. Not as a confession, I'm way past forgiveness. But as a warning, the slave trade isn't something separate from the wasteland. It is the wasteland. Every cap you spend, every caravan you trade with, every settlement you think is civilized, they're all connected to it, all complicit, all guilty. And if you think you're different, if you think you'd never collaborate, never compromise, never hold the chain instead of wearing it, then you haven't been hungry enough, haven't been scared enough, haven't had someone you love look at you with desperate eyes, begging you to save them any way you can. The collar marks on my neck faded years ago, can barely see them anymore. But the marks on my soul, those are forever. Every face I remember, and I remember them all, they're with me now. Slaves I caught, slaves I sold, slaves I killed, slaves I freed, all mixed together in my head. All asking the same question, was it worth it? No. The answer is no. It's never worth it. But in the wasteland, In this economy of flesh and suffering we've built on the ashes of the old world, worth isn't measured in morality. It's measured in caps. And caps are paid in blood. My name was Marcus Chen. I was a Vault 101 boy who loved his family. I became a slaver, a killer, a monster who tried to kill other monsters and only made more corpses. And if there's a hell worse than the Wasteland, I'll see you there.